All right, let's move on to Tickety-Boo news. I just want to have that happen again and again. I just want to keep doing the Tickety-Boo news guy. All right, Tickety-Boo news. Now, the purpose of Tickety-Boo news, okay, I just want to explain this because it's a little, it's not good news. It's not just, a happy thing happened here or something like that. It's teaching you to read into the news or saying how I think you should read into the news to see what's really going on instead of what the media tells you is going on, because the media has a purpose. And one of its purposes in this particular administration is to make Trump so toxic to be anywhere near that people desert him. And you can see that they did a good job over the Charlottesville thing, the businessmen who deserted him. And then you heard Don Lemon. Well, the businessmen have deserted him. Well, they were cowards. They were cowards. They deserted him. They could have, look, if they disagreed with him, they could have come out and said, look, we disagree with that, but they're so afraid. And remember, the left now basically controls big business. When you talk about the people who control opinions on the internet, the Google people, the Facebook people, there's all left-wingers and all people who are afraid of the ill opinion of the left. Ill opinion is a very, very powerful weapon. And so these people continually are telling us, you will pay a price if you don't bow and kowtow to the left. Now they're doing it with Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick has been basically excised from football because his egregious attacks on our flag and his protests over basically nothing. His protests over nothing, his refusal to stand up are bad business. Plus, he's not that good a quarterback. He had a good season when he could run and pass, but when they discover that the guy can't run without getting hurt and that's going to cost them their investment, he can only pass, and he wasn't that good a quarterback. That's why he's out, but they're pulling all this pressure. So they do this all the time. And what I would like to, and by the way, it works, for some of here's a piece from the Wall Street Journal says, for some of the top figures in the Trump administration, the ones who occupy the more conventional space of the political world, last week was tough. They're talking about the Charlottesville thing. They listened in distress as the president they work for appeared to defend a march marked by white supremacist and anti-Semitic sentiments in Charlottesville. I don't think he did that, but they spun it that way. From the left and from some never-Trump conservative circles, they were then told they had a moral responsibility to resign. Meanwhile, on the Breitbart right, they were being called traitors and worse. There they were labeled White House globalists out to undermine Donald Trump's agenda, and who had helped drive out strategist Steve Bannon. The cry was for them to be booted out. So this is what these guys are doing. Should they resign? This is the idea of what the press is doing. But let me just point to a couple of stories. A story about Mizzou, which is the flagship of the University of Missouri. Now, you remember back in October 2015, student activists claimed that this university was racist. They sent administrators a list of demands. The president of the University of Missouri system should resign after delivering a handwritten apology acknowledging his white male privilege. This is what they wanted. The curriculum should include comprehensive racial awareness and inclusion training. I would prefer if it just taught them how to speak English and do math. 10% of the faculty and staff should be black. So we're going to buy into the whole racist narrative. 2 weeks later, a student announced he was going on a hunger strike. The football team refused to practice or play until the university met the demands. Protesters occupied the quad. Administrators bent over backward to accommodate them, even providing a power strip so they could charge phones and a generator. And remember the communications instructor, Melissa Click, who said, give me some muscle to get this reporter off. Remember that woman? You always see the picture of her. Okay, so what happened to Mizzou? Okay, what happened to Mizzou? Here is an article about what happened to Mizzou. Timothy Vaughn dutifully cheered the University of Missouri for a decade, sitting in the stands with his swag, 2 hot dogs, and a Diet Coke. He estimates he attended between 60 and 85 athletic events every year. Now, he says, I pledge from this day forward not to contribute to the Tiger Scholarship Fund, buy any tickets to any University of Missouri athletic event, or to attend any athletic event. He was not alone. Thousands of pages of emails that this writer obtained through the Missouri Freedom of Information Act show that many alumni and other supporters were disgusted with administrators' feeble response to the disruption, and they have stopped giving money. Their registration has dropped off. I can't remember. It's huge, like 35%. They're closing buildings. There has been a price to pay. Meanwhile, you remember Chick-fil-A. You remember the fast food place that where the CEO, is a Christian who doesn't support gay marriage, and they came under all that. Remember, they tried to do it, and he's just faced them down. He said, no, this is what I believe. Now, listen, I don't agree with the guy, but I believe in his right to believe what he believes and to say what he believes and to support what he believes. He stood up for himself. And now, as of a year ago, Chick-fil-A became the dominant fast food restaurant in the country, selling multiple times more than, more than Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is the thing. There is a price on the left that they do not promote. They only want to tell you that there's a price for following Donald Trump and being on the right. They want to tell you, who is it? Russ Feingold wrote this piece, which is kind of admitting what they all say. He says, Democrat Senator for Wisconsin, Russ Feingold, the former Democrat senator, he wrote a column for The Guardian. He said, the lesson from Charlottesville is not how dangerous the neo-Nazis are. It is the unmasking of the Republican Party leadership. In the wake of last weekend's horror and tragedy, let us finally rip off the veneer that Trump's affinity for white supremacy is distinct from the Republican agenda of voter suppression, renewed mass incarceration, and the expulsion of immigrants. We're all Nazis, okay? So this is what they are trying to create. But the fact is the people will stand by you if you stand up for your principles, as Chick-fil-A shows, and they will punish you if they can when you capitulate to this leftist pressure. Always remember, the news is an instrument of leftist pressure trying to create that toxicity. But the facts on the ground is that you can survive standing up for your principles. You can survive, and the people will support you. And the people who in business should know this. And the other price, by the way, I got to finish up, but the other price for the rampant, violent leftism that we see is guys like Alan Dershowitz. And I point to Dershowitz specifically, one of the last sane men in America, is because Dershowitz is an old-style liberal. He is the old, you would have said in the old days, oh, he's a Jewish liberal guy, typical guy like that. Listen to him talk about Antifa.
Remember that President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, put 110,000 Japanese Americans into detention centers, that President Lowell of Harvard imposed anti-Jewish quotas, that discrimination against women was rampant. Once you start rewriting history of African Americans in this country, you have to start rewriting history of discrimination against many, many other groups. Look, we're both a nation of immigrants and a nation of discrimination against immigrants. That's an important history for us to remember. And the other important thing is, do not glorify the violent people who are now tearing down the statues. Many of these people, not all of them, many of these people are trying to tear down America. Antifa is a radical, anti-American, anti-free market, communist, socialist, hard left, censorial organization that tries to stop speakers on campuses from speaking. They use violence, and just because they're opposed to fascism and to some of these monuments shouldn't make them heroes of the liberals.
That is a classic liberal of the last generation and what he thinks of today's left. There's a price that the left is paying and will continue to pay, and it will get worse. And so remember when you're reading the news, you're reading people trying to inflate the price of being a conservative and deflate the price of being a left-winger. The reality is exactly the opposite, and that's Tickety-Boo News, which we have to see that guy again. We've got to see play that Tickety-Boo News thing. All right. It's worth doing it just for that. All right.